The SEAL commander saw her cleaning the Barrett .5. Seconds later, she held the 3.247M record. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into today's story. The SEAL commander walked into the weapons maintenance area just as the first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon. The base was still quiet, with only a few souls preparing for the day ahead. Among them was Staff Sergeant Emma Hayes, a figure many wouldn't notice at first glance. She wasn't particularly tall, and her appearance wasn't anything special. Yet, there she was, in the midst of the armory, cleaning a Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifle with an almost meditative precision. The weapon, an intimidating tool used by the most elite marksmen, lay in front of her like a familiar companion. To most, it was a giant, unwieldy machine, heavy and unforgiving, but to Emma, it was like an extension of herself. Her movements were smooth, practiced, every part being placed with care and attention. This wasn't her first time working with the Barrett, and it certainly wouldn't be her last. As she worked, she couldn't help but overhear the mutters of a few younger soldiers nearby. They didn't think she could hear them, but she knew their words all too well. What's she doing with that beast? Isn't she just the tech? One of them sneered. The others snickered, nodding in agreement. They had no idea who Emma truly was, and they certainly didn't expect much from someone like her. She was just the quiet one in the corner, keeping to herself. They didn't understand the power she wielded, her calm exterior hiding a deadly skill. The murmurs continued, growing louder, until one of the soldiers, a young recruit named Davis, decided to step forward. "What's the point of even handling a sniper rifle, Hayes?" he asked, his tone dripping with mockery. "This is the real weapon, right here." He pointed to a different rifle, a more conventional one he thought was the weapon of choice for the real soldiers. Emma didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her focus was on the task at hand. But in her mind, the moment they underestimated her was the moment she knew they would learn something they would never forget. As Davis continued to laugh, Emma's fingers moved effortlessly across the rifle, ensuring everything was in perfect working order. The rifle was almost fully assembled when the radio crackled, calling for immediate sniper support. Without missing a beat, Emma stood up, wiped her hands on her pants, and grabbed her gear. She walked past the group of soldiers, still laughing among themselves, and calmly said, "Let's see if I can prove you wrong." Little did they know, in just a few moments, Emma Hayes would reveal herself as one of the deadliest snipers the military had ever known. She wasn't just cleaning the Barrett .50, she was preparing for a mission that would soon leave her mockers speechless. As Emma walked briskly toward the sniper's hide, the base came alive with the hum of soldiers preparing for the day's activities. The morning sunlight bathed the training grounds in a warm glow, but Emma's mind was focused on the mission ahead. The radio crackled again, this time with a more urgent tone. "Phantom Base, this is Eagle 6. We need immediate sniper support. We are pinned down in a valley, taking fire from high ground. We are unable to engage effectively. Over." Emma's fingers tightened around the strap of her gear, her heart rate steady despite the adrenaline beginning to flow through her veins. She knew exactly what to do. As she approached her position, she couldn't help but feel a slight smile creep onto her face. This was what she trained for. This was what she excelled at. She wasn't just another tech in the armory. She was a deadly sniper, and now the world was about to see it. Reaching the ridge where she'd set up her sniper nest, Emma quickly unpacked her Barrett .50. She worked with precision, her hands moving fluidly, instinctively. Each movement was a part of her muscle memory, honed over countless hours of practice. With the rifle in place, she checked the wind speed, her breath slow and controlled as she peered through the scope. The valley below her was a battlefield. Her team, pinned down by enemy fire, was in desperate need of help. Emma's eyes narrowed as she studied the high ground. Through the scope, she could make out the positions of the enemy. They were well hidden in the rocks, firing with deadly accuracy. But she could see them clearly, every shift in their positions, every telltale movement. Wind at 12 miles per hour, from the southeast, she muttered to herself, her finger gently resting on the trigger. She adjusted the scope, calculating the distance, 1,800 meters. A challenging shot, but one she knew she could make. Emma's mind was clear. There was no hesitation, no doubt. Her body was in full control, her senses heightened, everything else falling away as she focused on the task at hand. She took a deep breath, held it, and slowly squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, a powerful crack that shattered the silence of the valley. She didn't need to watch the target. She knew it was a hit. Seconds later, the radio crackled once more. Phantom Base, Eagle 6. The enemy on the ridge is down. We can move. We've got cover. Emma allowed herself a small sigh of relief. She wasn't one for celebrating, but the confirmation of her hit was all she needed to know she'd done her job. As the rest of the team moved out of their position and made their way to safety, Emma's thoughts shifted back to the young soldiers who had mocked her earlier. They didn't know what she was capable of. They hadn't seen her skill, her calm under pressure. They had no idea how much training, how much sacrifice, went into every shot she made. It didn't matter now, though. What mattered was that the mission was a success, and the team was safe. A few hours later, back at the base, Emma received the recognition she rarely sought. "Nice shot, Hayes," one of the officers said, offering her a nod. "Thanks, sir," she replied simply, keeping her eyes focused on the task ahead. She wasn't looking for praise. She didn't need it. But she could see the shift in the way the other soldiers viewed her. The whispers had stopped. The mockery had faded. Now, they knew better than to underestimate her. That evening, Emma sat alone in the mess hall, a small meal in front of her. As she ate, a few soldiers walked by, nodding respectfully. One of them, a young recruit named Davis, who had been one of the first to mock her, stopped in front of her. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I just wanted to say, nice shooting, Sergeant Hayes," he said, his voice quieter now, less confident than before. Emma looked up at him, meeting his gaze. She could see the change in him, the newfound respect. "Thanks, Davis," she replied, her tone calm, no hint of sarcasm or smugness. The message had been delivered, but Emma wasn't one for making a scene. She simply returned to her meal, her mind already shifting back to the next task. She had done her part today, but there would be more missions, more challenges. And she would be ready for them. She always was. The next few days at the base were a whirlwind of training exercises, tactical briefings, and preparation for future missions. Emma, though, remained calm and focused, her mind constantly sharpening her skills and her aim. The young recruits, including Davis, seemed to have lost their arrogance after the sniper incident, though they still eyed her with a mixture of respect and curiosity. Emma didn't mind. She didn't need to be their friend, she just needed to be the best at what she did. It was early one morning when the mission call came through. "Phantom Base, this is Eagle 6. We've got a high-value target in the mountains. We need immediate sniper support." Emma stood up from the table where she had been eating, grabbing her gear without hesitation. She was used to this, used to the sharpness of the missions, the urgency that came with saving lives or neutralizing threats. As she made her way to the briefing room, her mind went over the details of the mission. High-value target in the mountains, those could be tricky. There were rocky terrains, steep cliffs, and narrow valleys, all of which could provide the perfect cover for an enemy trying to escape. The team had already secured their perimeter, but the target had to be neutralized from a distance. That was where Emma would come in. Inside the briefing room, the commanders laid out the situation. The target, a known arms dealer, was hiding in a cave system deep in the mountains, protected by a small but heavily armed group. A standard approach wouldn't work. The team would need to move fast, get in and out without alerting the target's guards, and Emma would have to take the shot that would stop him before he could escape or call for backup. Emma sat quietly, her eyes studying the map as the commanders explained their strategy. She could already feel her pulse quicken, the familiar anticipation building in her chest. She had been in situations like this before, but every mission carried its own weight, its own risks. The air in the room grew tense as the plan took shape, but Emma remained still, her focus unbroken. "Emma," the commanding officer finally said, looking at her directly, "this will be a tough one. You'll have to make the shot from over 2,000 meters. You ready for that?" Emma didn't hesitate. "I'm ready, sir," she said, her voice steady and calm. There was no room for doubt in this line of work, and Emma knew that. As she prepared for the mission, she checked her gear again, making sure everything was in order. She was ready. The mountain was cold and quiet as Emma and the team made their way through the terrain, carefully moving in position without making a sound. She could hear the faint rustle of the wind through the trees and the crunch of gravel beneath their boots, but otherwise, the world felt still. They reached the edge of the mountain range by mid-afternoon. Emma set up her rifle, the Barrett .50, carefully, adjusting the scope for the long-distance shot. Her team took their positions around her, ready for their part in securing the target once she took the shot. The target was visible now, barely a dot in the distance, but through the scope, Emma could see him clearly, moving between the shadows of the cave entrance, unaware of the danger that was about to descend on him. She adjusted her position again, her breathing controlled and steady, as she calculated every factor: the wind, the distance, the angle. The shot would have to be perfect. "Got him," she murmured quietly, almost to herself, her finger resting lightly on the trigger. Time seemed to slow as Emma took her final breath, aligning the crosshairs with the target. Her mind was completely clear, the world around her fading away as she focused solely on the shot. Then, with a steady exhale, she squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked back as the shot rang out, the sound echoing through the valley. For a moment, everything was silent, and then the report came over the radio. "Target down," the commander said, his voice crackling with surprise. "Nice shot, Hayes. We're moving in." Emma lowered the rifle, her heart still steady, though her mind was already thinking about the next steps. The team moved quickly, securing the area as they approached the cave, ensuring that the target's guards were neutralized. But Emma didn't stay long. Her job was done, and she knew there was no need to linger. As they returned to base, she kept to herself, her mind replaying the shot over and over in her head. It had been a clean kill. The target would never be able to harm anyone again. That's what mattered to Emma. Back at the base, there was no celebration, no grand display of praise. That wasn't Emma's way. She returned to her routine, silently acknowledging the respect that now followed her. She didn't need the recognition, but she knew it had come. As the days passed, the whispers around her became more respectful, less mocking. Emma's reputation had been solidified, and while some might still be surprised by her abilities, she knew the truth: she was a force to be reckoned with, a sniper unlike any other. The following weeks at the base were filled with a mixture of training, preparation, and missions, but for Emma, the rhythm of life was unchanging. She was always focused, always precise, always calm. There was little time for distractions, and that suited her just fine. Most of the team now respected her, though there was still an undercurrent of doubt among some of the new recruits. They had seen her skill in action, but the idea of a woman being capable of handling the Barrett .50 at that level was still a difficult concept for many to fully accept. Emma didn't care. She knew her worth, and that was enough. One late evening, after finishing her last training session for the day, Emma was called into the commander's office. "Hayes," Major Thompson said, his voice serious, "I need you for a special mission. You're being sent out with a select group for a high-priority operation. It's going to be risky, but I know you're the best for the job." Emma stood tall and listened intently as the major explained the situation. The mission was classified, involving a group of hostiles who had been terrorizing a nearby region, and intelligence suggested they were heavily armed. The target was to be neutralized before they could cause any further harm. As always, Emma's mind immediately began running through the logistics of the mission, the distance, the weather conditions, the team's approach. She had done countless operations like this before, but each one had its unique challenges. What set this mission apart was the high stakes. If they failed, innocent lives would be at risk. "I trust you, Hayes," Major Thompson continued. "You're one of the most reliable soldiers we have, and I know you can get the job done. I'll be counting on you to take the shot." Emma nodded once, firmly, acknowledging the weight of his words. She had been in situations like this before, dangerous ones where everything was on the line. But she never flinched. She never hesitated. That was what made her different. The next morning, Emma and the team made their way to the designated location, a remote area in the foothills of the mountains. The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows over the rugged terrain. Emma moved swiftly, her mind already in mission mode. She had no time for anything else, the job was all that mattered. The team set up their position in the valley, carefully positioning themselves for an ambush. Emma took her place at the rear, where she could see the target zone from a distance. She checked the wind, adjusted the scope on her Barrett .50, and silently prepared for the task ahead. The rest of the team moved into position, their eyes scanning for any sign of movement. Emma was the only one with the clear shot. Her training, her instincts, everything had led her to this moment. And she wasn't about to let it slip away. As the target appeared in her scope, Emma's heart rate remained steady. She wasn't nervous, she was focused. The moment felt familiar, almost routine, but Emma knew this wasn't just another mission. This was a mission that would test her, that would push her to the limit. Her finger hovered over the trigger as she adjusted for the wind speed, the angle, and the distance. The target was at 1,500 meters. It was a long shot, but one Emma had made countless times before. Target acquired. She whispered to herself, her breath steady. One shot. One kill. Her finger gently squeezed the trigger, and in an instant, the sound of the rifle cracked through the air, a sharp and decisive noise that reverberated across the valley. For a brief moment, everything went still. The team held their breath, waiting for confirmation. And then, the radio crackled. "Target down. Excellent shot, Hayes." The tension that had been building for hours melted away in an instant. The mission had been a success. Emma allowed herself a small, inward sigh of relief. There was no time to relax, though. The team moved quickly, securing the area and ensuring no further threats were present. As they made their way back to the extraction point, Emma's mind was already on the next task, the next mission. This was what she did. This was who she was. She didn't need praise or recognition. She just needed to know she had done her job right. When the team returned to the base, there were no celebrations. There were no grand speeches. There was only the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. The recruits, who had once doubted her, now watched her with a different respect in their eyes. Emma hadn't needed to prove anything to them. She had only needed to prove it to herself. And that was all that mattered. The days following the successful mission were quieter, but Emma never let her guard down. She continued her training, sharpening her skills with every shot and every movement. The recruits had started to treat her differently, not out of fear, but out of respect. She had earned it the hard way, not by boasting, but by showing what she was truly capable of. Emma wasn't one for showing off, and she certainly didn't seek recognition, but she could feel the shift in the way they looked at her. They no longer saw her as just another tech, they saw her as one of the best, a force to be reckoned with. One afternoon, as Emma was finishing her routine shooting practice, Major Thompson approached her, his face serious. "Hayes," he said, his tone more somber than usual. "We've got another mission. This one's different. It's high risk, and we need someone who can keep their head under pressure. You're the one for the job." Emma nodded without hesitation. "What's the situation, sir?" Major Thompson paused for a moment before continuing. "We've received intel that a group of insurgents is planning an attack on a convoy carrying critical supplies to a nearby base. They're heavily armed, and they've been using guerrilla tactics to avoid detection. We need to neutralize the threat before they can strike." Emma listened intently, her mind already shifting into mission mode. "What's the plan?" she asked. "You'll be working with a small team to provide overwatch for the convoy," Thompson explained. "We'll need you to pick off any threats from a distance, but it's going to be tricky. They're using the terrain to hide, and they know how to move without being seen." Emma didn't flinch. This was what she had trained for. The mission was dangerous, but that was never a deterrent. It was just another challenge to overcome. "Understood, sir," she replied. "I'll be ready." The next morning, Emma and her team were airlifted to a position near the planned convoy route. The terrain was rugged, with thick forests and steep ridges providing perfect cover for any enemy forces. Emma and her team set up their positions in the trees, carefully camouflaging themselves to blend into the environment. The convoy was scheduled to pass through the area in a few hours, and Emma's team had to be ready. As the convoy approached, Emma's focus was absolute. Her rifle, the Barrett .50, felt like an extension of her body, her hands moving with the same fluidity as when she cleaned it in the armory. She checked her scope one last time, adjusting for the distance, the wind speed, and the angle. Everything had to be perfect. The convoy moved steadily along the winding road, unaware of the danger that lay ahead. Emma scanned the area through her scope, watching for any signs of movement. Then, just as she had expected, she saw them. A group of insurgents had positioned themselves in the hills, preparing to ambush the convoy. Emma's heart rate remained steady as she calculated the shot. She knew that one mistake could cost lives, but she had complete confidence in her abilities. Her finger gently rested on the trigger as she took aim at the first target, a figure moving between the trees. The shot rang out, and the target dropped instantly, silent and swift. Emma didn't wait to watch the result, she was already lining up her next target. The insurgents didn't have time to react before Emma took out two more of them, each shot landing perfectly, each one keeping the convoy safe. The rest of the team moved into position, but Emma stayed focused on her targets. She continued to pick off the insurgents one by one, each shot precise and deadly. The convoy was in the clear, and it wasn't long before the enemy forces were scattered and neutralized. Emma lowered her rifle, her heart still steady. It had been a perfect execution. The convoy had passed safely, and the threat had been eliminated. As the team made their way back to base, Major Thompson approached Emma, his expression one of quiet admiration. "Nice work, Hayes," he said, clapping her on the back. "You kept your head in the game, and you saved a lot of lives today." Emma didn't respond with words. She simply nodded, her expression calm. She didn't need praise, but it was nice to hear. Back at base, there was no fanfare, no celebration. Emma didn't expect it. She returned to her routine, preparing for the next mission, knowing that her reputation as one of the best snipers had already been established. She wasn't here for accolades, she was here to do her job, and she did it well. The following weeks were filled with routine training and preparation, but Emma could feel that something was changing. The respect from her peers was now undeniable, but it wasn't the respect she sought. Emma had always been driven by the need to prove herself, not to others, but to herself. And now, she was starting to feel like she was in a place where her skills were fully recognized. The recognition was quiet but constant, and that was enough for her. One evening, after completing another long training session, Emma was called into the commander's office. As she entered, Major Thompson looked up from his desk, his expression serious. "Hayes, we've got something special for you. It's a high-profile mission, and we're sending our best." "You're on it," he said, his tone almost matter-of-fact. Emma didn't flinch, just nodded. "What's the objective, sir?" she asked, her voice calm and steady. Major Thompson slid a map across the table, pointing to a remote location in the desert. "This is a top-secret operation. We've got a terrorist cell using an abandoned military base as their headquarters. Our job is simple: eliminate the threat, capture any intel, and get out before the enemy knows what hit them." Emma's mind immediately began processing the details. An abandoned base in the desert, perfect for an ambush. The terrain would be difficult, but it also provided a good vantage point for a sniper like herself. "When do we leave?" she asked, already preparing herself mentally. "Tonight," Thompson replied, standing up. "We've got a tight window. The longer we stay, the higher the risk of discovery. We move out at 0200 hours. You'll be with a small team, and your job will be to provide overwatch." Emma nodded again, without hesitation. "Understood, sir." The next few hours were a blur of preparation. Emma checked her gear, ensuring everything was in place for the mission. Her Barrett .50 was cleaned and ready, the scope adjusted perfectly for the long-range shots she would undoubtedly need to make. Her mind was already visualizing the mission, each step, each move. By 0100 hours, she and the team were loaded onto a military transport, heading toward the desert. The moon was high in the sky, and the air was thick with anticipation. Emma sat quietly in the back of the transport, her eyes closed, her breathing steady. She was used to these moments, moments of calm before the storm. As the transport landed in a secluded area near the base, Emma could see the dark outline of the enemy compound in the distance. The desert was silent, the only sound the whisper of the wind. The team disembarked and moved quickly through the sand, careful not to make a sound. Emma led the way, setting up her position on a high ridge that overlooked the base. The rest of the team fanned out, securing the area around her. She checked her rifle one last time, adjusting the scope for the distance. The base was about 1,200 meters away, just within range of her Barrett .50. The wind was calm, which was good. She wouldn't have to factor in much windage for the shot. As the team settled into position, Emma's eyes never left the compound. She could see the faint glow of lights from the windows of the building, but there was no movement yet. The silence was eerie, but she knew that could change at any moment. "This is it," Emma whispered to herself, settling into the prone position. She focused on her breathing, her heart rate steady. The seconds ticked by slowly. Her mind was sharp, every detail of the mission playing out in her mind like a script. And then, she saw movement. A group of figures appeared outside the building, moving toward a set of trucks parked nearby. They were armed, and they had no idea that death was about to rain down on them. Emma adjusted the scope, narrowing in on the first target. Her finger gently rested on the trigger. She breathed in, then out, her finger squeezing the trigger slowly. The shot rang out, and the first target dropped without a sound. The others immediately began to scatter, but Emma was already moving on to the next target. She didn't waste time. One by one, the enemy soldiers fell, their movements stilled by the precision of her shots. "Target down," Emma whispered, her voice steady and calm. "Clear the area." The rest of the team moved in quickly, taking out the remaining enemies. Emma stayed in her position, watching over them as they worked. The mission was going smoothly, just as she had expected. But she knew they were on borrowed time. They had to get in and out quickly. After the area was secured and the intel gathered, Emma and the team made their way back to the transport. The operation had been a success, clean, efficient, and deadly. As they boarded the transport to return to base, Emma allowed herself a small, quiet smile. She didn't need anyone else's praise. The success of the mission was enough for her. As the transport lifted off and headed back to the base, Emma knew that this was just one more victory. There would be more missions, more challenges ahead, but she was ready. Always ready. As the days passed following the successful operation in the desert, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. There had been no shortage of missions before, each one presenting its own set of challenges, but this time, she felt an unfamiliar tension in the air. The respect from her peers was undeniable now, but she still preferred to stay out of the spotlight, quietly returning to her routine of training and maintaining her sniper skills. However, even with her usual focus, Emma couldn't ignore the subtle shift in the way the higher-ups looked at her. It wasn't just about being a soldier anymore, it was about being someone who could be relied upon when the stakes were highest. One evening, as Emma was finishing up a training exercise with the new recruits, Major Thompson approached her once again, his expression unreadable. "Hayes, I need you for something special," he said, his tone unusually serious. Emma's heart rate didn't change, but her mind immediately began to process the words. She had known for a while that a big mission was coming, and it seemed the time had arrived. "What's the mission, sir?" she asked, her voice steady. "You're being reassigned for a special assignment," Thompson replied, handing her a folder. "This is a high-risk operation, and you'll be working with the best of the best. We've got a VIP in danger, and we need to get them out of a hostile territory. You'll be providing overwatch for a team while they extract the target." Emma nodded, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline. "When do we leave?" she asked, not waiting for further details. "Tonight," Thompson said, his gaze never leaving her. "The target is a high-ranking official who's been taken hostage in a rebel-held city. We don't have much time. It's a complicated operation, and we need someone with your precision to ensure everything goes according to plan." Emma didn't hesitate. "I'm ready, sir." By 2,100 hours, Emma was in position with her team, the air heavy with tension. The city they were targeting was located in a remote part of the country, far from the nearest military base. The team's job was simple: extract the hostage, neutralize any threats, and get out as quickly as possible. Emma knew that the simple part of the mission was rarely the case. As the team landed on the outskirts of the city, Emma's mind went into full tactical mode. The rebels in the area had been using guerrilla tactics, constantly moving between buildings and changing positions. It would be difficult, but Emma had trained for this. As the team began their advance, Emma took her place on a high vantage point overlooking the city. She set up her Barrett .50 and began to scan the area. Her team was moving stealthily through the streets below, but Emma's job was to ensure they didn't walk into a trap. The city was eerily quiet, but she knew that could change in an instant. The faint sounds of movement in the distance were enough to keep her on edge. "Team, this is Hayes," she whispered into the comms, her voice calm and steady. "I've got visual on the area. Stay sharp. I'll provide cover." The team acknowledged her signal and continued moving. Emma adjusted the scope, watching the streets below through the lens of her rifle. She could see the shadows moving in the distance, rebels trying to remain hidden, but not fast enough. The first shot was clean and precise, a rebel soldier falling without a sound. She immediately moved on to the next target, her movements smooth and fluid. The team continued advancing, unaware that Emma was neutralizing the threats ahead of them, keeping them safe with every pull of the trigger. The mission was going smoothly, but Emma knew it wouldn't last. As the team neared the building where the hostage was being held, Emma's heart rate picked up. They were close. Too close. A group of rebels suddenly appeared, emerging from an alleyway with guns raised. Emma didn't waste a second. The shot rang out, and the first rebel dropped. The others barely had time to react before she took them out, one by one, each shot landing perfectly. "All clear," she whispered into the comms, her voice calm. "Proceed with the extraction." The team moved quickly, securing the building and rescuing the hostage. Emma kept her eyes on the area, scanning for any other threats. As they made their way back to the extraction point, Emma's mind was already running through the next steps. The operation was a success, but she knew they still had to get out. The enemy could strike at any moment. The helicopter arrived at the extraction point, and the team loaded the hostage onto it, their mission nearly complete. As the helicopter lifted off, Emma gave a final sweep of the area, ensuring there were no more enemies waiting to ambush them. The mission had been flawless. The hostage was safe, and the rebels were neutralized. Emma allowed herself a moment of satisfaction, but only a moment. This was her job, and she would do it again when called upon. As the team returned to base, there were no cheers, no celebrations. Emma didn't need them. She had done what was required, and that was enough. In the days that followed the successful extraction mission, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. The mission had gone as smoothly as it could, and the hostage was safely returned to the Allied forces. But for Emma, this feeling of success was fleeting. She was already looking ahead, thinking about what came next. The base had grown quieter after the mission, the usual hum of activity settling into a calm routine. The recruits, once skeptical, now treated her with a quiet respect, though Emma never sought it. She preferred the stillness, the focus on her work, rather than the attention. But there was always a sense that something bigger loomed on the horizon. Late one evening, Emma was once again called into Major Thompson's office. He looked up from his desk as she entered, a new folder in his hands. "Hayes, we've got another mission," he said, his tone more serious than usual. Emma straightened, already preparing herself for the briefing. "What's the situation, sir?" she asked. Thompson didn't waste any time. "This one's different. We've received intel that a rogue faction has seized control of a strategic location in the mountains. They've taken several hostages and are demanding a ransom in exchange for their release. We need to neutralize the threat, save the hostages, and secure the area. It's a high-risk mission, but I'm confident you're the best for the job." Emma listened carefully, already processing the details. Another hostage situation, another mission where everything was on the line. It was nothing new. The only thing that changed was the urgency. "Understood, sir," she replied, her voice steady. Thompson nodded. "You'll be working with a small team. Your job will be to provide overwatch and eliminate any threats from a distance. We need you to stay calm, precise, and most importantly, make the shot that will end this." Emma nodded, her mind already focusing on the task at hand. By 0200 hours, Emma and her team were en route to the mountain region. The terrain was rugged, the high altitudes adding another layer of difficulty to an already dangerous mission. The helicopter touched down in a remote area, far from the faction's known position, and the team disembarked quickly, moving through the shadows of the mountains. The air was cold and thin, but Emma barely noticed as she focused on her surroundings. The team set up their base of operations, and Emma took her position on a high ridge that overlooked the target area. Her Barrett .50 was already in place, and she began to scan the area, looking for any signs of movement. The sky was still dark, the stars hidden behind the thick clouds that loomed above. As she peered through her scope, she could see the faint outline of the enemy compound below, its windows dark, but there were signs of life within. The hostages were somewhere inside, and Emma's job was to ensure that the extraction went smoothly. Her team would breach the compound, neutralize the enemy forces, and rescue the hostages, but Emma's job was to provide the cover. "Team, this is Hayes," she whispered into the comms, her voice as calm as ever. "I've got visual on the compound. I'll provide overwatch. Stay sharp." The team acknowledged, and Emma adjusted her scope, locking onto the first target. The insurgents had no idea she was watching, but she could see them moving in the shadows, unaware that their time was running out. The first shot was clean, a rebel dropping silently in the distance. Emma's eyes never left the scope as she lined up her next target, picking them off one by one. The rest of the team moved forward, their movements swift and efficient. With each shot, Emma kept her team safe, eliminating the threats before they had a chance to strike. As the team moved deeper into the compound, Emma's mind was sharp. She didn't let herself be distracted by anything other than the job at hand. The hostages were close now. Emma knew that they had to move quickly. The seconds ticked by slowly as she scanned the area, her finger ready on the trigger. Her team reached the heart of the compound, and Emma was still covering their every move, watching for any signs of danger. Then, as the team reached the hostages, something unexpected happened. A final group of insurgents appeared from behind a corner, weapons raised. Emma didn't hesitate. The first shot rang out, and the enemy forces crumpled to the ground. Her team moved quickly, securing the hostages and ensuring they were safe. With the mission nearly complete, Emma lowered her rifle, her mind already shifting back to the next task. They had neutralized the threat, and the hostages were safe, but there was no time to relax. The team made their way back to the extraction point, and as they boarded the helicopter, Emma took one last look at the mountain compound. The mission had been a success, but Emma knew that there would always be more. And when the call came again, she would be ready. As the helicopter touched down on the base after their successful mission, Emma felt the familiar sense of accomplishment wash over her. The hostages were safe, the insurgents neutralized, and once again, she had done her part to ensure the success of the mission. The team disembarked, moving swiftly and efficiently as they made their way to debriefing. Emma kept to herself, her thoughts already moving forward. She didn't need to reflect on the mission, she knew what had been done. The success was a result of hard work, preparation, and precise execution, and that was what mattered. Inside the debriefing room, Major Thompson greeted her with a nod, his usual stern expression softened with a hint of approval. "Hayes," he said, "good work out there. You kept your head in the game, and you made sure the team got through it without a scratch. The hostages are safe, and that's thanks to you." Emma nodded, accepting the praise, but she didn't feel the need to say anything. Her job had been done, and that was enough. As the debriefing continued, Emma's mind wandered, thinking about what the future held. The team had been effective, but Emma knew that there would always be more threats, more missions. There was no time to rest, not when the world outside was full of danger. As the meeting wrapped up, Thompson called her over. "I've been thinking, Hayes," he said, his voice lowering slightly, "you've been with us for a while now, and your skills are unmatched. I want to offer you something." Emma raised an eyebrow, curious but not overly eager. "What's that, sir?" she asked. "We've got a spot open for a sniper instructor," Thompson replied. "We need someone who can train the next generation of marksmen, someone who can pass on their knowledge and experience. I think you're the one for the job." Emma was quiet for a moment, considering the offer. She had never thought about becoming an instructor, but the idea of training others, passing on her skills to those who would follow in her footsteps, was an intriguing one. "I'm honored, sir," she said finally. "But I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet. I'm still focused on the field, on the missions." Thompson smiled. "I figured as much, but I wanted you to know the offer is on the table when you're ready. You've got the respect of the team, and I think you'd make an excellent instructor." Emma nodded, appreciative of the offer but still focused on the present. "I'll think about it, sir," she said. "Right now, I'm just focused on the next mission." With that, she left the debriefing room, her mind already shifting back to the field. The offer to become an instructor lingered in her thoughts, but it wasn't her priority. Not yet. As Emma walked through the base, she couldn't help but notice the change in the way her peers treated her. There were no more whispers or mockery. Now, there was only respect. She had earned it, but more importantly, she had earned it through her actions, not her words. She had proven herself time and time again, and now, her reputation spoke for itself. Emma didn't need the validation. She didn't need the recognition. What mattered to her was the mission, the work, and the sense of purpose that came with it. As the sun began to set over the base, Emma sat down for a quiet dinner, alone as usual. She wasn't lonely, she had long since learned to appreciate her own company, but she couldn't deny that the silence was comforting. The world outside was filled with chaos, but here, in this small corner of the base, Emma found peace in the simplicity of the moment. She knew the next mission would come soon enough. She knew that her skills would be called upon again, and she would answer without hesitation. That was what she did. That was who she was. As the days passed and the routine continued, Emma kept her focus sharp, her mind always prepared for whatever came next. She wasn't in it for the fame, the recognition, or the accolades. She was in it because she knew her purpose, to serve, to protect, and to be the best at what she did. And as long as there were missions to be completed, Emma Hayes would be ready, no matter what.